Hello and welcome everyone back. Thank you for attending this virtual lecture. We'll be going further in spreadsheets today, and hopefully everyone has signed up here like we did. You'll have your own sheet for this month with your name here in column B. If not, be sure to go back and watch the very first welcome lecture, and I discuss how to get to your sheet and how to find your name, how to sign up. Everyone does need to sign up and say hello in these places. I use this to track your progress through the month. So if you're doing this, but you're not actually, if you're watching the lectures, but you're not actually typing things in, you may get notified that you're behind and missing work in class because all of this is required. You are expected to be working alongside here, even if you understand it, even if you know it. Go ahead and just fill it out as we go. That way we can see that you understand it. We can see if you're having problems, where you're having problems, and we can help you out. Another note for this lecture and all upcoming lectures is you can pause and go back anytime you want. Now you can look down and see the length of the video lecture now. I don't know for sure what it's going to be because I'm recording it right now, but when we do this live in a classroom and interactive, it can take up to an hour and a half. And you'll see that this video is nowhere near that length. All right, what that means is all the places where it's expected for you to take a few moments, look at what we've done and do some work, we're going to go through that and skip all those pauses. So what I expect you to do is as you're watching this video, pause it, take some time, do what you need to do. If you need to look something up even further and get a grasp on a concept, that's totally fine. That's one of the advantages of doing this asynchronously is you don't have to worry about keeping up with anyone. You can go at your own pace. If you need to back up, do that. Again, there's a lot of information that's going to be coming at you very rapidly. So if you need to pause, back up, rewatch, slow it down, do anything you need to take your time. Okay? All right. And with that, let's go ahead and get started by saying hello. There we go. And this should be in column H on the first column after the day 2 break here. We're going to say hello. And now I want to talk a little bit about spreadsheets, why we use them, what they're useful for, why you should care. Is this just busy work we're giving you? The answer is no. Spreadsheets are incredibly important. And I would say we're going to take this from 2 different directions. One is the practical for the spreadsheet. The 2 is the reality in the game industry. So let's look at the practicality of spreadsheets in and of themselves, just for you as a person. Okay, so why spreadsheets? Let's back all the way up and do just a moment of philosophy. So let's use an analogy here of, let's say you work in a warehouse, right? And your job all day is to move boxes of stuff, and sometimes pallet loads of stuff or shelf loads of stuff. And this stuff can be heavy. Sometimes it's light, sometimes it's really heavy, sometimes it's inhuman heavy, tons, right? Can't be done. So this would be an awful job. If this was your job all day, every day, picking up boxes, moving them around, stacking them, sorting them, organizing them, especially if they're heavy boxes, a terrible job. Okay, now let's say we introduce to this job a forklift. Okay, so if you get in your forklift, got a nice air-conditioned cab, got a radio, good forklift, you drive it around all day, you pick up the pallets, you move it around, and the forklift does all the work for you. All you have to do is know how to drive it, right? And once you know how to drive the forklift, you don't have to be strong enough to pick up and move all this stuff in the warehouse. You just have to point the forklift in the right direction, do the thing, and it gets done. And some would tell you, and myself included, having driven one before, driving a forklift is actually pretty fun. So it turns what would be an awful job, once you get used to it and learn the method, into a really fun job. Okay. And it does inhuman amounts of work. Okay, so how does this relate to spreadsheets? Should be fairly obvious that in game design and in life in general, we often have to do a lot of math. We have to take data objects and mathematical concepts, formulas, and functions, and we have to move them around all day, every day, especially in the video game industry. And some of these things we need to do are inhumanly complex tasks, or at least impractical for a human to do. Technically, we could do it, but who would want to spend weeks doing some calculations? So that brings us to the spreadsheet. That's very much like the forklift in our analogy, that once you learn to drive or work a spreadsheet, it will do all the work for you. Not only will it do work for you that you could do yourself, but faster, it will also do work you could not do. And we'll get to that fairly soon, that like a human just simply couldn't do the amount of calculations quickly enough to keep up with the spreadsheet takes off. So once you learn to work a spreadsheet, not only is crunching data and doing calculations go from something that's very difficult or impossible to much easier, it actually becomes fun. And you can look into and see things that otherwise you would not have seen, and you can understand other people's games and your own games in a way that would not have been possible before. Okay, so that's the philosophy of learning the spreadsheet. Now let's talk about the industry application. So I hear occasionally people ask me, do we actually use spreadsheets in the game industry, or do they have their own special tools? The answer is the spreadsheet is, I would argue, the most ubiquitous, commonly used tool in the video game industry. You might say, well, wouldn't it be Unity or Unreal or 3D Studio Max or Maya? Nope. There's a lot of variations of those tools, and those tools change pretty rapidly. So the 3D Studio Max that I learned to use in the late 1990s barely resembles 3D Studio Max today. The game engines Unity and Unreal, just in the time I've worked at Full Sail over several years, have been updated and changed so much to be unrecognizable. And if you were to have learned even 5 years ago, you would have to relearn today. That's part of the normal in the game industry. We're a high-tech, bleeding edge industry, and we do that on purpose. So part of the industry is constantly relearning new things, with a few exceptions, and one of those major ones is the spreadsheet. The modern spreadsheet works very much like they did 25, 30 years ago, and is even fairly related to the very earliest spreadsheets in the 70s. Like if you look at a spreadsheet now and a spreadsheet from the late 1970s, they're very familiar. They're very similar. So if you learn a spreadsheet now and they've become a very stable platform, that means you'll have that knowledge and that ability for the duration of your career. And you can't really say that about any other tool. So 2 reasons to use a spreadsheet. One, does tons of work that humans couldn't do on their own for you quickly. And 2, it gives you a foundation and a tool that will never go out of date. So because of those 2 things, I think spreadsheets are one of the most important things you can learn, and why you're learning them fairly early on in your experience here at Full Sail. Okay, so let's get into the actual learning then. When we typed hello in the cell, I typed in some text. This is also called a string. Okay, in computers, we call it a string of text, shortened to string. Okay, so don't think of yarn or twine. When you hear string, think of text. And different kinds of data in a program or in a spreadsheet can have different things done to them. And a string or text is the simplest form of data we can enter. And we can't do much to it. It mainly just sits there, okay? So that's a piece of information, and it goes in what's called a cell. If you look at the spreadsheet, notice how it's made. here on my screen of boxes, lots and lots of little boxes. Each space that we click, we can see is a little box. Each one of those boxes is called a cell, and each cell has some contents. The most basic kind of content you can put in a cell is a string, text, right? And that's what we've been doing to this point so far. When you typed hello, when you put in the link to your worksheet, when you put in your Discord handle, right? All of that is just basic text, okay? But there's a whole lot more that is contained in a cell, and a cell is the foundation for the entirety of a spreadsheet, okay? So let's look at some other things that are contained in a cell. First and foremost, very importantly, each cell has an address. So if I look at my cell where I typed hello, and I use my mouse to track all the way to the top, I can see above anything I've typed is an H, okay? That means I'm in column H. These are columns. If we look at each header here and we click on it, notice that we've selected the entire column. And we're going to get more into that in the next lecture. And then if we look all the way to the left, we have similarly a row. Okay, so when we put those together, H3 for me, for right here, the cell address, the coordinates that I use to find this cell are H3. It always goes column first and then row. Okay, so the next thing we can do with our text is we can put in some information. And for here, what I would like you to do is put in your favorite food. Okay, and it doesn't matter what it is. Don't think too hard about this. And actually, Paul, if I could have you start typing. Okay, so what I want to illustrate here, my lab specialist, Paul here, has started typing some data. Notice we are sharing this same workbook and we're working remotely. So he's in one place, I'm in somewhere completely different, but we're both on the web at the same time working in the same Google Sheet. Yep, we're in the future. It's amazing. We didn't used to be able to do this even like 10, 15 years ago. So this is really a great progress we've made. So if you look, see how I've typed in some information. I have a blinking cursor there. When you put information into a spreadsheet, it often does calculations based on that information. And you would not want your spreadsheet to do calculations based on partial information because it would break other things, right? If you have an incomplete formula, function, or data, and it's trying to figure out what that is, you want it to wait until you put in the whole thing. So now notice where Paul has typed in his favorite food, the block is gray. This indicates that that cell is open and active. And if you notice on my screen where I've typed in sushi, it's got a blinking cursor. Again, this cell is open and active. Now on his screen and anyone else's screen who was in here, they would see this as grayed out as well. They would see I'm working on the cell and it's open, okay? Now, once I'm done, once I've typed in, I have two options. I can either hit the Enter key or I can hit the Tab key. Now, if I hit the Enter key, notice the cursor goes away. The sushi is pushed back and down just a little bit. There's a little visual indicator that I've input that data, and now that data is visible to everyone. So now Paul's going to go ahead and hit Tab, and notice his cursor, which is highlighted in red, mine's in blue, his cursor went to the right. So if we hit Enter, we open a cell. If we hit Close, Enter, we close the cell and go down, okay? Now, if we hit Enter and open the cell and then hit Tab, we move to the right. So normally, either way is fine. And as you make your spreadsheets on your own, either method works exactly the same. When you're working on our big shared sheet with all your fellow classmates, they're above you and below you. So for this class, try and use Tab so you stay on your row because you have a row dedicated to you. and everybody else has their own row. So use tab for this class, but when you're doing your own sheets, go ahead and use enter or tab, whatever feels comfortable to you. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I want to add some more information. I want to add how many times a year in a normal year, in an average year. I know we've had some crazy years recently. So in a normal year, how many times do you get to eat your favorite food? Okay, and put this in as a number. Please don't estimate. Please don't put in weekly or anything like that. We want to put in an actual number. Okay, and then notice what happened. So I typed in 26, which means roughly every other week I get sushi. And when I hit tab, it put in a decimal place and a 0. This is a default numeric format. Okay, and it doesn't matter what number I type in. Notice Paul put in 5 here. I put in 26. We both get .0. Okay, if we want, we can remove that. So I'm going to select my cell and go up here. This is called your toolbar, right? You can see it in the middle there near the top. And on the left side, there's decrease or increase decimal places. If I increase, notice it puts a lot of zeros. It doesn't change anything. It's still just 26. It's just changing the display of what you see as a user. Okay, so I'm going to reduce that down to 26. Okay, so notice also that sushi is justified to the left and the number is justified to the right. Okay, this is a shorthand to let you know what you can and can't do math with. If I said I wanted to multiply this by 2, I could do that for 26, but I can't do it for sushi. The computer doesn't know what sushi times 2 is, or pierogies divided by 3. It doesn't understand that. So it needs a number to do math on it. So that's why it lets you know if it's justified to the right by default. Now we can change this. There is a justification button, which we'll look at a little bit later, and you can move it around, but by default, numbers go on the right and text goes on the left. Okay, next up, let's add some more information. So I want here, someone has asked me, hey, what's that 26 mean? And what does it mean for the sushi? Well, I know that's the number of times I've eaten it, but I also want to let someone know where my favorite place to get it is. Okay, I don't have a cell for that, and I don't want to add a cell for that, but I do want to include that information. So there are 2 ways we can do this. I would like everyone to go through these 2 ways and do them. So the first way is if we right click, notice we get this huge menu, which has a lot of useful things in it. And we'll go over most of these. But for now, what I want you to do is go down all the way to where you see a little word bubble. It's one of the few things that has an image with it. And I want you to select comment. Okay? Now, when you do that, you get this little interface. And it has a picture. And it lets you email me. You can schedule an event with me. You can send me a message. You can video call. Pretty cool. You get a lot of options there. And then it says comment. All right. Okay. So I'm going to comment here. My favorite place in Orlando to get sushi is Picuri. It's a restaurant on Colonial. Check it out if you get the chance. It's great. And then I can either cancel or I can say comment. Okay. And now it's complete. And I have a check that says resolve. So we'll figure out what that means. Or I can edit it. I can delete. I can make a link to it and I can read it. Now, if I click anywhere else, notice that comment has been hidden. Okay. Unless we see up in the right-hand top corner, there's a little orange triangle. This is called a flag. And if I mouse over the cell, take my mouse cursor and place it over the cell, we see, aha, there's what Paul said. And there's what I said. And now I can say, this is resolved. I get it. You gave me the information. Or I can respond to it. Say here. There we go. I'll just ask him a question. There we go. Reply. And then we can actually have a full conversation in here. So Paul, I've asked him some further information on his entry there, his comment, and now he has the chance he can respond, and he says he does. So see, we have a little conversation here, and all of this is neatly self-contained in that one small spot. Another thing to notice while you're looking through here, down at the bottom tab, see we have all these tabs for all the different sheets we're working on. Notice now that in our current tab, we have a little word balloon that says 2. That means there are 2 comments. And if I mouse over it, there they are. Notice they overlap. It's a little messy when there's a bunch really close, but that at least lets you know, hey, so comments are made to be a call to action. So when you put in a comment, it's supposed to get someone's attention quickly, get them to either respond or do something, and then go away. Comments are made to be temporary. So if you have questions on any of your assignments in a spreadsheet, we will probably go into your spreadsheet and leave comments. Okay, so that's why we asked you when you very first started and made your own worksheet to share it so that we can add comments. And that's directly so we can add comments and let you know, because when you add a comment, you are at no risk of damaging the spreadsheet. If you have a spreadsheet with some sophisticated formulas and functions, which we'll do later this month, and then you type over some part of it, you can break the entirety of the spreadsheet or the calculations. On the other hand, if you just add a comment, you're at no risk of breaking it. So you can comment on anyone's spreadsheet at any time and feel comfortable and safe knowing you're not going to harm the spreadsheet. So fantastic use of the comment. So the next thing we can do is, once we've got the point across, we got it, gonna go ahead and hit check. Okay, got it. And then we can see the number goes down, and then Paul will go ahead and hit check, and we can see the number will go away. There it goes. And all the comments are gone. Okay, now let's say you like the information, you want to keep it there, but you don't want to shout at anyone. Comments are kind of shouting, like, hey, come here, check this out, right? That's what a comment is for. But we don't want to shout. We just want to say, in case you're curious. So for that, we have another option, which is insert note. Now notice here, no name, no submit, no email, start voice message, none of that. It's just like Notepad. And this is very much like when you learn scripting or programming, you can add comments. This is exactly the same thing. And when we type in here, and notice I don't have to submit, I just click off, and now I have the same little flag, but this time instead of orange, it's black, and there's no respond, there's no check it to make it go away, there's no count, it's just there. This is a great place for you to comment this much like you would script. So if you have a function or a formula in here, maybe you want to give some background on why that's there, or the rules that pertains to from your game. That's what the notes are for.
Excuse me, Dax.
Yeah, you bet.
Question about notes. We can respond on comments. Can we do something similar with notes?
No. Notes are supposed to be just basic backup information. Notice there's no name on them. There's no place to respond to them. You can modify them, so I could change this if I wanted to, but nope, they're a much simpler form of communication. Okay, so if you want to respond back and forth, we got you covered. Use comments. If you just need to add some basic information, add notes. Okay, so next up, what I would like everyone to do is we're going to type in another number that we're going to use. We're going to type in cell K, column K, in your row 3.3. Okay, and we're just going to hang on to that for a moment. All right, so next up, we're going to start doing some operations. And this is where we start unlocking the power of the spreadsheet for it to go superhuman power. And everything we do in a spreadsheet is either data that sits there and can be acted upon, or it is something active. So far, we have just used data that is acted upon. Static data is what that's called. Now we're going to do something active. And anytime you do something active, and you may have spotted this in another class already or earlier in life, this is a very simple operation. We need to let the spreadsheet know we're going to do something. And when we do that, we start with the equal sign. Okay, the equal sign is the code to let the spreadsheet know we're going to do something. Another way to think of it, because this works, it seemingly works a little bit different than you're used to with doing math on paper, right? You usually do 1 + 1 = 2, right? And here you start with the equal sign. What this means metaphorically is you're saying, I want the result shown in this cell to equal something. Okay, so for here in column L, I want to put in 10 divided by 3. Okay, so I want the result of this cell to equal 10 divided by 3. Okay, so if you think of the equal sign that way, it's always at the beginning. You never have equal signs in the middle to create an active cell or to do additional functionality, but you always put the equal sign at the beginning once and only once to indicate to the spreadsheet we're going to do something active. So there we go. Set this cell equal to 10 divided by 3. Now notice neither of our cells have done it yet until we hit enter. Okay, so there we go. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to modify some of the contents of one of the cells. So let's go back to our food, our favorite food, and I want to use some of these formats we have up here. So starting from the left, go ahead and click on these. We have bold, we have italics, we have strike through, and we have text color. So let's change all of those. And then we have fill color. So let's change that too. There we go. And we can see we can do a lot to this cell. We can also change the borders. Let's not do that currently, but you can do that in your own sheet. There's lots of options of dotted and whatnot. So you can change the borders and alignment and other things like that. So that's what all of these do. In our shared spreadsheet, we can also change the font and size, but please do not. We need to fit everybody, as many people on a page as we can. If you make a giant font, you drive other people off the page. So we'll stick to this in your own sheets. So feel free to go as nuts as you want, as makes your spreadsheet good. Okay, so now we have some really crazy color code, and I would recommend everyone try and get as crazy as you can. Do really silly combinations that you would never do in real life. Now's your chance to do them. Okay, so the next function I want to do in column M is I want to again start with an equal sign. We're going to do something, but this time I want to refer to another cell. We're again unlocking a whole lot more power because any individual cell in the spreadsheet is basically just like a calculator. So you could do anything in a calculator that you could do here, mostly. So what makes a spreadsheet special and not just a bunch of little calculators is that they can talk to each other and we can do layers. So to do this, I'm going to type in a cell I want to refer to, which is my food. And I can see that is cell I3, okay? And now that I type that address in after the equal sign, we'll think of that in the metaphor again. We're saying, I want to set the contents of the cell equal to what is in cell I3. And then if I hit tab, notice it says sushi. But also notice it does not have bold or strike through or italics or background or foreground color. Okay, so you're setting the value of this cell equal to the value, the calculated value of cell I3, not the format. Okay, only the value is what comes through because that's what the spreadsheet does calculations on. All right, next up, and again, do remember, pause anywhere you need uh, to take care, to get further with this, okay? So the next thing I want to do is I want to do some math based on a reference, okay? So I'm going to start with an equal sign, and then I'm going to use my arrow keys. Notice when I move back and forth with my arrow keys, you can use your arrow keys on your keyboard. It updates your cell reference. So I'm going to go all the way over to K3. That's my number where I typed in 3.3. And now I want to do some math on it. So I'm going to use a reference and I'm going to multiply it, which is the star, the little asterisk, times 3. Okay? K3 times 3. And then I'm going to hit tab. And we can see the answer is 9.9. Makes sense. 3.3 is times 3 is 9.9. Okay, so I'm going to do this again, equals, but this time I'm going to use my mouse and click on L3. Okay, and then again, times 3 and hit tab. Okay, so something's up here. Something has gone awry. Notice that in I multiplied 3.3 times 3 and got 9.9. In O, I multiplied 3.3 times 3 and got 10. Okay, something's up here. And we can see what's up by taking both of these columns. And as I showed you earlier, let's increase the visual decimal places. And look what we get. Behind the scenes, column K is actually 3.3000. Column L is actually 3.333 repeating. Now it can't possibly show infinite zeros or threes, so it has to cut off the display at some point. And we've decided that was at 1 decimal, like that. So it looks like 3.3 and 3.3 when it actually is 3.30 and 3.33 repeating. And that makes sense why when you multiply these, they come out as different answers. So really important concept here. And this is one of the things I see go wrong the most with new users is if I said multiply 3.3 times 3, you could do that in your head. You know, I believe in all of you are easily smart enough to understand how to do that. And you would say, oh, easy, it's 9.9. But it isn't always 9.9. Sometimes it's 10, right? And we don't know what other fractions. If it was 3.3111, it would also be different, right? Or 3.39 would also be different. So the important takeaway, and this is absolutely critical, when you're building a spreadsheet, type in as few numbers as you possibly can. If at all possible, use a reference, okay? Because typed in numbers, things you do in your head, very easily could go wrong. And you'll notice this on some of the upcoming assignments. You're building a spreadsheet. If you get off by a little bit, you're off for the rest of the assignment and everything could be broken after that step, which is a horrible place to find yourself in. So the way to avoid that is always use references and formulas. Don't do math in your head. And I'll say the equivalent of if you're driving around in your forklift in the warehouse, would you jump out and go try and lift heavy things? No, man. Let the machine do the work, right? That's what it's there for. That's why you learn to work it. Let the machine do the heavy lifting. You kick back and relax and just drive the machine, okay? All right, so we've noticed that we have a bunch of tabs down here and we've referenced things on the sheet, but now I want to take it a step further. We're going to go over to this tab labeled Blood Bowl. And we can see we have a bunch of data. This is from a game called, not surprisingly, Blood Bowl. And it's a pretty fun game. It's got a lot of characters and mechanics involved in it, which you don't need to understand, but you do need to look at the data. Okay, so we have a bunch of data over here. We have a bunch of data for team names, for titles, and look down here at cell C24 and notice it says Death Roller. Okay, so I want to refer to that just like I've been referring to things already in our sheet, but I want to refer to this different sheet now. Okay, so I can't type in C24. If I did, which I'll go ahead and do, equals C24, notice it says 0. And it says 0 because C24 here is 0, right? On this sheet. It doesn't know I want to go to another sheet. So let's get out of there. And instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in equals, and then I need to first tell it what sheet do I want to be in. Okay. Now I need to also let the spreadsheet know I've just typed in a sheet name. This isn't a variable. This isn't a function. This isn't some code word or text. This is a sheet name. And the way I do that is with another special symbol, and that is the exclamation point. So when I type in an exclamation point after a word, that's the signal to the spreadsheet to let it know I just put in a sheet name. Okay, so once I do that, now I'm in that sheet and I can type in an address as if I was on that sheet. So to read this out, it says, I want the contents of the cell to be equal to Blood Bowl, the sheet, at C24. Okay? And when I hit tab or enter, it will input Death Roller. Okay? Okay, so the next thing we can do is we could retype that every time we want to do a reference, and that would take a long time to retype this, and it would be prone to error. You got to type everything right. If you misspell anything, it'll break. Or we can learn to copy and paste. Okay, so the easiest way to copy and paste is if we look down here at the bottom of our cell that we have selected, notice how it's got a little blue box down at the bottom right, and if I put my mouse over it, it turns into a crosshair. This is called a form fill widget, okay? And this form fill widget, basically what it does is it lets you copy and paste quickly with your mouse. So if I move my mouse over it, I click the left button, hold it down, and I drag over and release, you can see something has happened. Something strange has happened. And now what I would like you to do is pause the video, look at the cells, look at P, look at Q, go back and look at the Blood Bowl page, see if you can figure out why we got this strange result. Very mysterious. Okay. All right, pause. And when you're ready, come back. Hopefully you're ready now. Let's go over this and see if we figured out what happened. All right, so let's click on P3 and it says Blood Bowl, exclamation point, C24. Good to go. All right, now let's click on Q3. It says Blood Bowl, exclamation point, D24. Look, CD, CD. So it updated the column. It changed the column. So we went one to the right and it went one to the right. So that's really strange. So let's look in Blood Bowl. We're going to go down to Dwarf Death Roller. They're on C. And then let's look at D. D just looks like a gray box. But notice up above all the columns, we have this little bar that starts with an FX. That's the function bar. And that tells you what's going on behind the scenes. Right? Back in our Students tab, If we look at our 10, it shows us 10, but we look in the function bar, it says that's L4 times 3, which we type, so that makes sense. So in Blood Bowl, it says what I've actually done here is I've changed the foreground and the background color both to gray so you can't see it. And then I hid the text strange on this column, very sneaky like, to show this point. Okay, but that doesn't answer the question of why did it change? This is called relative reference. And with relative reference, what it means is that when we move up or down and copy and paste up or down, it automatically updates your references up or down. And it does this, as you'll see in the next lecture, mainly for our convenience. It's very fast and convenient to rewrite a bunch of formulas and have them all updated to the correct cell and be relatively referenced. But we don't always want that to be the case. So if we don't want to update and we want the cell reference to remain the same, we have to do what's called absolute referencing. And the way we do that is we start by typing equals. And now I want to show you a shortcut. I'm going to go to, once I've typed equals, I've opened the cell and I've activated it, as we discussed before. And now I'm going to go to the tab labeled Blood Bowl. And now you can see my cell is floating above the sheet. That means I'm still in that cell. It's still active. And now I can use my mouse to click on Dwarf Death Roller. And then look what it did. It just filled out everything for me, including the exclamation point, including the proper phrasing, right? And then when I hit enter, it brings me back to the main sheet and enters my data. Okay, so this is relative reference, and now I want to update it to be absolute. And the way I do that is I add another character, and that character is the $sign. Okay, and I need to add it in front of both the C and the 24. Okay, Blood Bowl, exclamation point, $sign, C, $sign, 24 is the full calculation of the reference I want to make. Okay, and now that I have that, I have again Blood Bowl Death Roller. From the Blood Bowl tab, I have Death Roller. And now if I use my form fill widget to drag over, notice it now still says $C, $sign 24. Okay? All right, so we're almost done for the lecture today. And the last thing I want to do is one more special symbol. And what this does is because we've spaced all this stuff out in lots of cells, which I recommend you do. Cells and rows and columns and spreadsheets, they're free. You get as many as you want. They don't cost you anything. So spread out. When in doubt, make more cells, right? Don't try and do complex formulas all in one cell. Spread them all out, as we've done here. We've got lots of different cells doing lots of different things. But now that I have those, sometimes I need to bring those back together to make a cohesive whole. And to do that, we need to essentially glue different cell references together. And our glue is a symbol called the ampersand, right? I'll show you right there. See, it's the ampersand. It's a little and sign, all right? It's Shift 7 on your keyboard, okay? So now I want to make a complete sentence here. So I'm going to type equals, and then I need to start with a reference. And I'm going to start with a reference to a name. I'm going to pick on my lab specialist, Paul, there. And then I want to glue something to that. So I need to add an ampersand. That's my glue. And now I want to put in some text. And if you remember back from any basic scripting you've ever done, you know the text goes in quotes. And so I put in a quotes, and then I'm going to put in a space, and I'm going to say eats, and I'm going to put another space, quotes, and then I need more glue because I'm going to stick something else on here, ampersand, and I'm going to put his number, right? I'm going to put a reference to his number, and I'm going to put another ampersand, and then I'm going to just put in quotes, space, quotes. And I do this because computers don't know that spaces are referred to. They're text. Spaces are text like anything else. And then I'm going to put in more glue here, another ampersand, and I'm going to put a reference to his food. And then I'm going to put in more glue, another ampersand, quotes, space, year, end quotes, and then tab. Okay? So now we see that we've taken our moving parts and we've created a whole sentence out of them. And the important thing to know about this is one, we need to make sure that we've used the proper format and used ampersands. The most common problems I see with this are not enough ampersands. You need to glue everything. Think of it, if you're gluing pieces of wood together, there needs to be glue between every single piece of wood. Not just some of them, not just the first and last, but every single one. So we've got a bunch of pieces of data here that need glue, and the ampersand acts as that glue. Okay, the other important thing to notice is this data is live. So now I'm going to go back and change my favorite food, and Paul's going to change his to the worst food ever. Okay? Oh, Paul, I'm going to change your mind on sauerkraut one of these days. It's the best.
I don't know. I come from a very German family. My dad used to make it. Not a big fan of cabbage.
I'll change your mind. It's great.
All
So
right.
we've both now changed our favorite food to the worst food. And notice over here, when we did our concatenation, it is now automatically updated instantly. Okay, you can start to see where the power of references and spreadsheets is going to start growing quite a bit here. Okay. All right, that covers it. That's enough for today. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording here. If you have questions, be sure to come to a scheduled live lecture, live lab, or reach out in FSO Messenger and let us know. And if you have questions about a specific cell, add a comment, as we've just discussed, and send us a link to your sheet, or if you're on the shared sheet, just let us know what cell you're confused about, and we can go in directly add comments to your cell and let you know, give you the help you need. Okay? All right, thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now.